Hello, everyone. A huge welcome to the BackRound Dancer. This is a Soulfest 2021 Virtual Art Festival special, and I have here three incredible people, Megan Schneider, Jacob Caldwell, and Elsie Mays Brown. First of all, just thank you for being here today at the BackRound Dancer.
Thanks for having us. This is super cool.
Yeah.
I've never been on a podcast before, especially as a dancer. This is wild.
Yeah, super exciting.
All right. The basis of this episode is somewhat unusual for normal BackRound Dancer podcast episodes in the sense that we did a lucky draw and everybody had designated questions to answer. So just to give everybody a little basis, everyone here at this episode is involved with the art festival to some degree, to some extent. And today we're going to have very simple questions to tackle very complicated issues within the dance industry. And that is very much the premise of the BackRound Dancer podcast that aims to investigate all the different sectors about dance apart from the primary component, which is performing. So I'm very happy to have all of you here who have experienced multiple things across your lives and found a way to intertwine with dance at some point. And that was also very true for me. Jason Yap, as the host, I came into dance at the late age of 16, and I found my way into an international and professional full-time dance job. It's possible. It's always possible. You just have to find your place in the world. So to begin things, Now, we'll start with Megan, and then we'll go with Jacob, and then later Elsie. The first question I would like to ask everybody in the shortest way possible, the fastest, quickest way possible. Walk us through your journey and how you arrived at dance.
Oh, wow. Well, for me, I also relate to you, Jason, and kind of entered into dance a little bit later. I didn't start dancing like more seriously until high school, is when I got into it because of the marching band and the color guard at my high school, and they had like a little dance program attached with that. So that's really where I started learning, and then got to UCSC and really was like I could stop dancing, but then I was like, no, I kind of want to keep dancing because it feels good, and ended up finding this really awesome community and meeting people like Jacob and just creating things with friends, and that's kind of where I'm at right now is just wanting to create and make community.
For myself, I actually stumbled into a dance room thinking it was a theatrical audition, and I saw everyone stretching in their leotards and warming up and asking me what style I danced, and I was saying I liked monologues. So it was quite an opportunity for me to audition for a dance crew, not being prepared for that situation, and that really kind of catapulted me into the world of dance up at UC Santa Cruz here in California, which was, I don't know, it was quite the experience in the sense of finding a whole community of people to support me in my journey. And that's sort of how my journey has been all along. It's dance has found me and really come into my own pocket and my own hands. I moved down to LA after graduating, getting my bachelor's degree, and fortunately was able to find employment through Arthur Murray Dance Centers. But obviously, as everyone here has experienced, the pandemic has absolutely altered and shifted the world of dance. And so I decided to take on the journey with myself and start my own nonprofit during the pandemic. And yeah, it's been fun, and it's been adventurous, and it's been challenging, and I'm ready for the next step in our journey.
Nice.
Yeah, similarly to a lot of y'all, I didn't find dance later, but I think really like committed to like technique later in my journey. So I started dance when I was in elementary school. I was like that kid who was always like putting on like shows for people like who I'm sure didn't want to hear me sing or dance as like a 3-year-old, but were really encouraging. And so I started like ballet and tap when I was about 6, and did cheerleading throughout elementary school and middle school, and was involved in like community programs, and then really started to like get serious about technique more when I was in high school. And then after I graduated, I apprenticed for a little bit at like a local contemporary ballet, and was able to continue training and got some real like teaching experience under my belt. And then eventually went to university. I went to UNC Asheville, and they have a really small dance program. They actually don't even have a major. They just have a minor, but I was able to learn from some really incredible people there, and then after I graduated, just kept going. Performed with some companies that were in the Asheville area, going around the Southeast, and then unrelated to dance, moved to LA with my partner in January 2020. And yeah, it was an interesting first year in LA. Yeah, I got some dancing in before the pandemic really took hold, and was able to, meet a couple of people and take some classes. And then when the pandemic, really was underway and everything was shutting down, it was sort of an opportunity to reassess and really adapt to that's what we do, is we just adapt. And so started up an online platform for teaching dance classes that aren't super technique heavy. Like, it's all about expression. It's all about like finding ways to continue to like have that outlet when we're going through this, really traumatic and hard time. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Nice. Okay. All right, I'm going to go really quickly with mine. I started dance at the late age of 16, and I did Latin ballroom first, and I went to a little bit of hip hop, and then eventually found my way through to contemporary classical ballet. That's what I do right now. So yeah, I also have a psychology degree before that, so it was a huge turnaround and having to arrive at this point. And that's what really opened my eyes to the larger world of dance, in the sense that because I had a previous degree in psychology, it allowed me to really, dive deep into people's lives and, different perspectives about how to live life. And that really leads me to my first question. And I want to direct this at Megan. Now, this is a new one, a new bundle question that I did not include in the first draft when I sent to you. Think of the one thing that you are doing apart from dance, yeah? And you've already mentioned a little bit before the recording. So your question is, what is one similarity that thing has with dance, and one difference that thing has with dance?
That's a good question. So yeah, as I mentioned before, during the pandemic, throughout like pretty much up until a couple months ago, I was a preschool teacher in the pandemic, and now I work at a kitchen and managing a kitchen. And I think both of those things are very similar to dance in the way that you have to manage yourself with other people and kind of like manage yourself in physical space and sharing space with people. And yeah, and I think in the ways that it's different is that sometimes in school or in like a restaurant or a job setting, like you have to be very like restricted and not very expressive sometimes. But in dance, you can really like let loose and be yourself more. Yeah, so I think the space really holds different expectations sometimes.
All right. So I think there's a lot of nuances that we can go into that. Can you also maybe add on to that with how do you wish to eventually find your way back into dance as a result of that journey with preschool?
I would definitely love to get back to some type of teaching or some type of teaching like space or facilitating space. So yeah, I would really love to be able to create more space in my own life and be able to facilitate spaces like that, so people can have spaces to express and really let loose and try new things.
All right. Thank you, Megan. Next question is going to be for Elsie, and it's very similar, but a little bit on the skills aspect, right? So once again, Elsie, think of the one thing that you're doing apart from dancing. I actually checked out your SoundCloud. It's pretty cool. So you have a lot of things going on for you, but just choose the one thing that you want to mention here. Name one skill that you think you can use in that one, and one value as well, a personal value that brings that thing in your dance together. So very much a personal one, but try to tie them all together if you can.
Yeah, I definitely think adaptability, and that's sort of like a theme, for this year, or the past year, but just also in general, I think one of the biggest things that make dancers such great performers is our ability to adapt. And it happens all the time in dance. Things don't really work out the way we planned, or things just aren't going the way you expected them. And you make changes. and you try them out, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And either way, like if it works or it doesn't, like you know better for the next performance, or you know better for the next rehearsal. And it's kind of like the same with life. Like you kind of just get better at it, and yeah, you get better at it as you go, and you learn lessons along the way.
One value that you would like to share to people.
One value. Let's see. I guess like trust the process. Like it goes along with adaptability. Like, you know, things, like I said, like sometimes they don't go the way that you expected. But just like taking lessons from the creative process, and like knowing that like eventually it's a journey, and like you'll get closer and closer to like where you're trying to get to as you go along. It's the same with like creating as it is with creating dances, with creating life. Like it's a process.
I really love trust the process. I'm a huge basketball fan and I watch the NBA a lot. And the Philadelphia 76ers has the trust the process thing with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. So really cool way to tie that in. Thank you for that, Elsie. The next question I would like to ask is for Jacob. And I think I've already asked you this at some point, but Jacob, what don't you like about the world of dance? So do not, yeah? What don't you like about the world of dance? Let's be completely honest here.
I think, gosh, that's a great question. I think on a social level, dance is treated with a much different aspect of respect, and really in its own sense, it's in some ways it's accessible, in some ways it's not. I think culturally too, it's lost a lot of background here in America from my own bias standpoint and from my upbringing. I really did not grow up with dance. I never thought once through my teachings that I would be able to dance, and I'd be here today talking with all of you. And I guess I should say I wish there was more programming, more funding, more opportunity in the world. Is something that I absolutely dislike about the world of dance, which is harsh to say because I absolutely adore dance.
Hmm. Hey, that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about all these. I'm going to contribute a little bit so from the antithesis of that, and it's why I love about the world of dance. Yeah, so the complete opposite. And I'm just going to give a real cop out answer here. The best thing about dance is that you don't have to speak about it. It's just pure shapes, colors, and movement. Sometimes you talk too much, and we don't listen enough. In dance, you have to listen, especially to the music. That is basically your guiding principle. And I think maybe apart from dance, I don't know, physical theater has similar processes, music as well, where you don't have to really speak. Yeah, you're always extending that expression to something else. So that's what I love about dance. And all these questions are going to be revolved around some of these ones already, right? So as you can already see the pattern that I'm going under. The next question I would like to direct to is, once again, let's go back to Jacob right now, yeah? So I think I've also asked you this question before. Now, you've already mentioned many times that you have not been experiencing dance for as long a time as maybe you would have hoped, or a lot of the young kids who grew up, including myself, we've never had that opportunity. But what has been probably the biggest lesson so far that you have learned in this very short period of time?
I think my biggest lesson is that, kind of a tack on the end of what Elsie was saying is, it's really entrusting in the process and making sure that, as long as you stay authentic and true to who you are and what you desire, you will find that opportunity, which in America right now is quite lacking for the world of dance. And I have learned that I'm a completely different person with dance. I never thought I would find this angle or this side of myself without the medium and practice. I mean, I am, as many of you know, quite an energetic person, and I have a lot of ideas and thoughts that just kind of ramble or rant and really kind of bounce off the walls. It is early in the morning, but I am definitely a high energy level person. And similar to how you've said before in the past, Jason, how the practice of dance has matched your experience in sports and athletics. That's one of the reasons why it was an easy transition and something you decided to go into. For myself, it was a medium at which my energy level matched. You're exercising the whole body, the mind, and it was a nice way to find my own flow state, so to speak. Finding a way that I felt incredibly comfortable in myself and as authentic to who I can be in a space when creating.
Would you like to add on to that, Elsie? What has been the biggest lesson for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, I just keep coming back to adaptability. That's really the thing. And I also think just like the sort of like social cues that you're able to pick up dancing with people. Like, I think you learn a lot about people and about like connecting with people. And I'm sure like you can speak a lot to this as someone with a psychology background. Like, it's like we are born as artists. Like, we are able to react to music. We're able to dance to music and create music like before we're even able to walk and before we're even able to talk. And at some point, I guess some people like lose sight of that. And I don't know. Sorry, it's like all over the place. It's some people lose sight of that, and it's like I
was definitely following your track, and I felt as though I was definitely in agreement in what you're saying, in that we're social animals, we're social creatures, and that communal level of connecting through movement other than speech and voice, or in some sort of written code or any form of communication that we can extrapolate on. Movement is one that is very hardwired into our bodies, historically, really, in so many different cultures and areas of the world. And so it's natural for us to want to move. And that's something that's like kind of interesting to kind of delve into, and how that's adapted to today's world, really, right?
Yeah, and it's I think like it's really natural for people to connect. Like, we form these social bonds when we move together, and same with when we're moving together or we're making music together or whatever it is. Like, we're forming these social bonds, and it's like, I don't know, like, my dance friends are like some of the most diverse group of people, and it's because like dance is just such like infinite discipline. Like, there's so many different kinds of dance, and like there's so many different ways that you can dance, like whether you're like doing it as a hobby or you're doing it professionally or you're doing it ceremoniously. It's like, there are all these different kinds of ways that people can dance, and so because of that, it attracts so many people, and so you get to meet a lot of interesting people, a lot of different kinds of people, and just like having that shared bond makes it really really easy to connect and make friends with people who you otherwise like maybe wouldn't have met or wouldn't have have this like shared connection with.
Yeah. One of the things I always like to push with regards to this incredible question of whether dance, or let's say performing arts in general, should be incorporated a little bit more at the grassroots level of education, is the fact that dance itself, let's say, to go to the most microcosmic of levels, can really displace a lot of different subjects that are quite redundant, because dance itself, and through all the things that you've just said, teaches people so many different values and skill sets that are not just about dance, right? The act of moving to a certain rhythm. I think we forget about that. Like, for example, in my country, I always say, why do we need to learn something called moral studies? You can't study that from a textbook. You have to go into life and actually apply these things practically. And dance actually teaches a lot of us about respect, discipline, punctuality, all these different theoretical frameworks for moral studies that you can really displace the subject as a whole. Megan, would you also like to add on a little bit to some of the biggest lessons, or maybe one big lesson that you've learned so far?
Yeah, definitely. Really connecting back to what everybody has kind of said, and just kind of like dance and like being able to not only listen to like yourself and your own body, but being able to like extend that and listen better to others, and then use that as a way to like really make honest and whole connections with people. And I think, yeah, that really like comes down to how, like what Elsie was saying, how we are hardwired to really like to make these like noises and moves and and express ourselves in this really deep way that somehow we lose. And I think it sometimes is because like a lot of the times when I say like, oh, like I'm a dancer, and like if someone like, I think that is like a big identity block for people sometimes, is the word dancer. And so like in that way, like I think that blocks people from thinking that they like can dance, when it's just like, if you're moving and you're feeling good, like that's what dance is all about, and like that's what dance is. So yeah, I think getting back to that and being able to share that with more people is something that like is very valuable.
Thank you for that. My personal take about the biggest lesson, I would say, is just to look at dance from the bigger picture. Yeah, there's always a place to belong to. I think for every individual, it's really just about finding your own uniqueness, finding your own slot, let's say, in the world of dance, or just the wider world in general. So thank you all for contributing to that very important question. My next question is for everybody, and this is just a little curiosity that I have. How did you all found a way to dance and not anything else? So I spoke a little bit with Jacob prior to this sessions that I came into dance and I chose dance out of maybe acting or singing or any other thing because I was an athlete. It just made the most sense for me. And of course, I didn't like the nature of competition in sports. I prefer it in dance in the way. So let's start with Megan once again. Why dance and not everything else? At this level, at least, yeah.
I think similar to what you were saying, I had done sports in my childhood, and I had also done some like youth acting in like a company, and just never really found what felt the most expressive to me. And then going into high school, we got like this little presentation being like, do you like to like listen to music and dance in your room? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, that sounds fun. And then just kind of got brought into it, and then realized like, oh, this is something that you can actually like do more seriously than just in your bedroom, like hanging out. So in that way, yeah, it was something that really just kind of like, I felt like I fell into, in a way. But then once I really thought about it, I was like, this is something that like I want to have in my life for the rest of my life, and really like be intentional with it.
Wow. Okay.
Jacob, go.
So for me, I chose dance because, as stated previously, really, it's dance came to me, and I guess that's just an absolute like honor and privilege to be able to say, because I feel that there are many things that I've worked for, desired to go towards, in life, and worked to try to get to that position or that platform or space to act on that desire. And for example, theater, comedy, that was something that I pursued for quite some time. But dances fell into my laps in many different occasions and scenarios. And I think what's most important with that is, although I wasn't looking for dance, dance found me. And though I struggle to find opportunities in certain spaces where I'm looking for dance, when dance finds me, it feels right. And it feels like the thing that I personally need to connect to and invest time in. And so it's a very deep connection in feeling that this is the right pathway for me. I went in for a theater audition thinking it was a stage performance, but it was actually a dance production. I moved down to LA looking for employment to be an actor. Had zero ballroom experience and was told, hey, you could become a ballroom dancer. Just take some time and do that. I was in the pandemic and was trying to look for more opportunities to connect and create a community. And everyone around me was saying, start something, start dancing, start doing TikTok, create an online platform. And, although I wish it was as simple as saying, I have this idea or this is what I want to create or what I want out of dance, somehow there's an energy in the world that I have found quite a few times that's saying dance, 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 keep on going. This is what you need to do. And it's a strong energy and force, especially when it's your peers and your fellow colleagues or people that you really admire. But that's truly why I chose dance. It's because it's the only path that is there for me, I guess.
Thank you for that, Jacob. Elsie, what was your story? Nice.
Yeah, so yeah, like I mentioned kind of earlier, I found dance. Well, we're born dancers, and it's kind of just like our natural state of being. Like I was dancing and singing around the house and like putting on shows for like my family and friends, and they were kind of like, oh, she's at it again. Like, was just always this like really high energy, like physically and mentally, like very high energy person. And so like just performing was always something that I was like, yeah, I'm like into this, put me on a stage. And like my adrenaline is just like, I gotta have more of it. And then, tried dance out, did like cheerleading, which is also like super high energy, but I think has like more of a different culture, like creatively. You're still like moving in sync with other people, but there's less freedom creatively to sort of like just move in different ways and like explore different facets of movement. It was kind of restricting in that way. And so that's ultimately why I returned to like more classical forms of dance training in high school. And then when I was in college was when I was introduced to like traditional West African and African diasporic movement. And that was really like, wow, game changing for me, because it was really just like so very high energy, which is obviously like I'm into it. Very high energy and very visceral. Like there's something so freeing about traditional West African movement that I really just like clicked with almost instantaneously. It's also the only dance form that I've studied where it's by default that you are dancing with live music. And that is also, I mean, as someone who, I consider myself a dancer, but I also consider myself a musician. And just being able to connect not only with like other people that I'm moving with, but people who are, moving with us in a different way, using different instruments to move, was just, an experience that I can't find anywhere else.
Let's shift gears a little bit right now, and I'm going to throw a little boomerang here, because I'm very interested in this question, and I'm hoping to get something out of it that could help myself, and that's why I ask people this question. Now, think of one personal struggle that you have with the industry right now? Yeah, and it's a little bit different to the previous question of like, why don't I like dance? You cannot like dance for some reason, but this question is more about what you can resonate with within the industry that is a personal struggle. And then when you've thought of that particular thing, maybe also quickly brainstorm and just throw in something that you think might solve that issue. Yeah. So, what is one personal struggle within the industry that you have, and what do you think you can do to help it out? So, let's go to Jacob.
I think when I consider that question, thinking about how the dance industry is, it's quite a wide industry in the sense that there are opportunities more offshore than there are here in America, from what I've at least seen and witnessed. And I guess what I want to start off with is what's missing and what's a struggle is a lack of arts education. I feel as though the arts are not as promoted or well funded here, and really there's a large cultural divide, even in certain counties or districts all across America. And so, creating a practice and movement for youth is quite a challenge. And I think as that kind of trickles up rather than trickling down, as we all know, as a frame of reference, as a trickle up effect, I believe it really creates a space and environment that lacks an economic opportunity. Really, I feel as though if there's a larger access to education in the arts and practice and movement and performance, I believe that there will be a larger push from the general public for creating more economic opportunity for those people who are growing up and wanting to be artists. As Meg mentioned earlier, I think it's so funny how the term dancer is so scary to people. When I tell people that I'm a dancer, it's a shocking thing. Someone of my own identity being a dancer, on a cultural level. But at the same time, when people look at me and say, "You're a dancer, so what are you doing? Did you make it? Are you actually, are you okay?" It's almost like a barring question, making sure that everything's okay in my world, because it's almost like the elephant in the room. Everyone knows that it's a struggle to be an artist, here in America, but even on the outside, and constantly trying to figure out ways to, quote unquote, for lack of a better phrase, sell yourself and really be that in this world is quite challenging. And so, I feel like there is a lot of opportunity in the future for us to create an artistic revolution that really changes the world and how we perceive dance and how we approach it, not just on an individual level, but as a society and community.
Megan, what are your thoughts on this? I assume that you're working with kids most probably also broaden your perspective on what they are about to go through themselves if they ever choose to go into dance, which one of my most favorite mentors always said in Hong Kong, where I studied. His name is Dr. Joseph. He says, if you want to be successful in dance, just go find a rich partner. It's meant it as a joke, but
It has truth to it.
there's always a silver lining there, Yeah. Okay. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's going really all back to accessibility and just like there's not much in early education other than like if you have to go out and pay for it, and unfortunately dance classes, especially in America, are extremely expensive. So like when I especially think about like my students and thinking about if they would want to pursue that type of expression and how just money would be a big block for that, and how that is just like unfortunately then creates this cycle and this barrier of then the only people who make it as dancers are these people who have access to it their whole lives, but then it creates this loop, which it ends up being very unfortunate because it feels very difficult to break into, similar to like what Jacob was saying. Like you can't really like people get shocked when you say you're a dancer and they're like, oh, with what company? With like what kind of dance. Like they expect you to be able to like pull out your point shoes and show them a trick right then, or do a backflip right in front of them. And I think, and it just in that way, the accessibility of creating a more like whole definition of dance and really getting back to our bodies and just dancing and not having to codify it or capitalize on it in any way.
Yeah, I mean, just piggybacking off of what Megan Jacobs said, like accessibility is definitely an issue, and it comes up, not only in limited access to dance training, particularly for young folks, but also like accessibility culture within dance itself. Like, how are we, reinforcing barriers to dance through, like perfectionism and like worshiping technique above all else. Like, I think really just kind of serves to like devalue like people's emotional capacity for dance, and not just like as a performer, like it takes away like that innate right that we have as humans and as dancers to move like without filtering our bodies, like just like allowing the emotions to flow. And I think like a culture of competitiveness that circulates, like especially in like competition circuits, like really limits artists and limits the art itself in a lot of ways, and like tries to put it into a box. And so like that's created personal struggles for me, like as someone who I didn't have access to like top tier like technique training as a kid. Like I mentioned earlier, like I grew up in like rec center community programs, and I did like little league cheerleading, which was like run by like volunteers. And it wasn't until I was in high school and was working myself that I could afford like more professional training. And so at that point, like accessibility had already, I don't want to say held me back, but it had, at that point, like I felt like I looked at my peers and was comparing myself and was like, oh, well, I should be, meeting these markers on technique. Because that's kind of like what the messages I got from the culture. And it took me like a while to learn that there are, like, I have my own unique skill sets that, are also valuable. Like, I might not have like the perfect high arch point, but I have drive, and I work really hard, and I'm a passionate performer, and like those things are really valuable. And I think that if we were instilling that into young folks more just as heavily as we were point your toes, straighten your leg, shoulders back, chin up. If we were instilling, like showmanship and work ethic as just as hard as we were instilling all of the technique-driven aspects, so many more people would consider themselves dancers. So many more people would be confident, like getting up and just moving in front of people.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to say that really going off of that, that's absolutely a good point that you're bringing up. It's this, kind of going back to what both Meg and Elsie was saying, this cycle that's repetitive, and it's really contains a lot of elements of perfectionism. And, I think it's really rooted in a lot of capitalism here in America, and how our country operates, and how we as a society approach the arts and what's viable and what's not. And I think we as a younger generation are finding new ways to reinvent that and hopefully change America for the better in the future, but not just America, the global community of dance. As we are continuing on and really finding new pathways, I think it's really interesting to see how, we all come from different backgrounds in dance. We all have different desires, and we've all had different opportunities within that medium, but we have all had similar experiences, whether it's at home, abroad, and we've all heard the same stories or different stories at the same time, but they're all rooted in a lot of movement and practice and how really it's dance is an ever changing field. There's no one particular way. And I think Jason really mentioned that in our last Sunday dance session was how, you know, you can find something in dance. You may have to create it. And that's really what's the truth about being a creator and procurer of art. But it's, it's a wild cycle over here when it comes to being a dancer, or what is a dancer, right? Rather than just being able to enjoy it as a hobby.
I mean, with regards to that particular question, like we'll go into that a little bit more later on, which is going to be very fascinating. But once again, like before I move on to the next question, like I started to watch dance because, you know, it was partly an accident, and then the other thing was because of So You Think You Can Dance. Like it was premiered or it was broadcasted all the way to Asia, the American one I'm talking about, and it was like that's where dreams are made, right? Like the American dream thing. And then to hear all this coming out, it's, I wouldn't say it's surprising, but it's definitely anticlimactic. And it just goes to show that a problem that you have over there, or everyone has in their own little regions, is quite universal at the same time with regards to dance, right? We're not come to a point where we can say this is our problem. It's actually everyone's problem. Like we all have the same kind of problem, that accessibility, education. My personal take, like a struggle, I would say, is very much, like I said, once again, relevant to everyone's point, is monetization, where, you know, people in the dance field are so eager to work for free because it just gives them some form of exposure to get to the next level and then to be able to charge people after that, right? But it all comes down to the fact that, you know, like everyone has already mentioned that people do not appreciate it enough to be able to monetize it, you know, in their own way. People don't pay for it. They don't, you know, blah, 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 blah. And there goes back to the point of like, okay, why do not more people actually like it or pay for it? So I am going to move on to the next question. And this is the first time I'm going to allow anyone to just kind of like, hey, if you want to contribute to this one, go ahead. If you don't, it's up to you, because this is a little bit of a curveball. And the question is very simple, is I want you to project really far into the future, super far into the future. And let's say you've come to a point where you are about to end your dance career at any level, let's say. Now, what do you want, or what do you wish for people to say or think about you when you have finally decided to stop dancing?
You know, I think about that quite often. How do I want to leave this world? Not only in my own sense and my ego, feeling accomplished and feeling like I had some form of impact. But I guess what I want to say is and I do see it happening now with the advent of application in social media of like TikTok, or, you know, even what we're creating in this space right now. I wish to bring more value to the practice of dance and it as a communal practice of connecting with one another, and more so than not when I leave this world. You know, as you were saying, you know, it's quite a significant issue is the monetization. However, through my past experience with Arthur Murray, you know, I was a dance instructor, but I was also a salesperson. You know, how bizarre is that? Thinking about what it's like to sell a dance program to someone and say, you know, nobody walks into the dance studio saying, this is what I need for my future and what I want. I need dance lessons. I had to sell it on people. I had to help them see the value of what's important about dance, right? You know, I would say about 90% of the students that I saw come into Arthur Murray weren't looking to dance because they wanted to perform or they wanted to practice or they They just love dance. About 90% of all the students that I saw wanted something emotional out of it. And this kind of ties back even further to what we were saying as social creatures that are hardwired to connect with each other, whether it's through voice, eye connection, so many different ways, physical, mental, emotional. But most students were coming in for therapeutic reasons, mending something within themselves or with a partner, because it was partner dancing. And I think it's so interesting to see how people's perspective can change when having a small, subtle conversation about dance. I know that many people throughout the week can say, hey, did you hear that song you heard last week? How cool was that one song? I love that artist. I love that song. That's so cool, because the music industry has really taken off into a beast of its own sense in comparison to something like the dance industry. But what would it be like if we lived in a world where we say, hey, did you see that dance show the other week? Or did you see the choreography in that music video? Where that was more of the conversation. Did you see that movement practice? Did you hear about this new theory that just came out? How cool is that? I want to bring dance more into the conversation. I think it's incredibly important. And, it's really cheers to you, man, because you have this whole podcast that's dedicated to the practice and the conversation of dance, and you are adding more to the world. I think we've all had such a fruitful conversation today, just thus far, of really what is there and what's to come, right?
Well, I'm thinking Megan next because, you like somatic movement therapy, and, Jacob has already mentioned that people go there as a therapy. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that truly is something that is always a long-term goal of mine, is to just kind of create dance spaces, or like help make dance spaces just a little more open and a little bit more accessible, so people can feel like that they can enter them like really authentically and wholly, and express themselves however they want. Because I feel like when you go to a dance class and are told what to do, sometimes that can be difficult for people who feel like they don't consider themselves a dancer. So I feel like in that way, I would love to just help push the education aspect of dance, and push it into like a form where it is more accessible, and more accessible in youth too, and like really like show kids and people younger that like it is a possibility, so they don't get to the point where they have to come in and be like sold on a dance class, but they can feel like, it's something that's within their body and within themselves that they want to bring forth and express. And it really just, I think, comes all the way back down to getting back to that body mind connection, and that space where you were when you were a baby, where you're just making noises and movements because it feels good. And that's, something that I definitely strive to contribute.
Elsie, take it away.
I'd have to agree with both Jacob and Meg. It's like, I guess just broadening, I hope to, help to people to broaden their own personal definitions, and broaden accessibility, like, pushing the boundaries of what we consider to be, an artist, and broadening definitions of dance as an art. Like Jacob said, like, not everybody's interested in performing, and like that's okay. Like, you don't have to be a performer to be a dancer. You can like go and social dance with someone, and like that makes you a dancer. You can dance in your living room by yourself, and you're a dancer. It's and I think that I'm really excited about the conversations that we're having, and that furthering those conversations is only going to help to make that a reality. like I'm excited for the future. I think we're like moving in a right direction.
Nice.
So,
All right, one final question for all of you, and I'm super excited about this question, but I'm going to do a little bit of a twist to it. So we've mentioned a couple of times already throughout the conversation. Everybody has been contributing to, let's say, the discourse of what it means to be a dancer, right? Now, on this podcast, I usually ask people at the very end of what makes a dancer. And I think all of us have already spoken at various lengths as to what that means. So let's take it one step further. Let's detach ourselves from that very identity as a dancer. I'm going to start with Elsie once again. Yeah. The question rather is, what makes dance?
movement. I mean, like any movement that has emotion attached to it, like that's dance. I I don't think it has to be, technical. I don't think it inherently has to be to music. Like you can find music in anything. You can like hear the ticking of a clock and that's time passing and you can say like tick tock tick tock. Boom, I just danced. Like you're moving your body expressively through time. You could be doing it alone. You could be doing it with people. You could be doing it to music. You can be making music with your body. It's all dance.
Nice. Let's go with Meg now.
Yeah. I feel like for me and the way I consider dance is like dance is connection. It's connection to yourself, to your mind and body, but also to others. I think dance is really about connection and connecting with other people.
Jacob, I think I've asked you this before, but this is a completely different one. I asked you what a dancer was, right? But what makes dance for you?
I'm going to get a little existential here. I absolutely believe that dance is existence. Dance is existence in its purest form. I one of the things that I love to think about is that when I first began dancing, I for maybe about 2 to 3 years, I did not consider myself a dancer, but I was dancing in shows and doing things like that, right? I had moments where I felt like I could walk on stage and someone was like, do something, and I can just wiggle my body like in some sort of avant-garde fashion, and whether there's an audience, like an audience there or not, I feel as though within internally or externally, there's some sort of applause, like you moved with intention. And one of the things I love to do, especially on any lesson, is connecting the world outside of what is socially known as dance and making everything else dance. I'd have people come in saying that there are dentists and they're kneeling over, leaning over a patient of theirs, and they're constantly at work and they need some sort of structure or movement practice or really therapy for their own body. And being able to connect dentistry to dance, or if I have someone who's into sports, right? It's a basketball player dribbling down the court. That's like choreographed movement, right? We've all had this discussion earlier, but really, when we're learning to walk, that's choreography. We're choreographing our feet to work in unison and really move together, and how we can really experience the world and experience is existence, from what I understand. But yeah, right. I really, I've always loved these questions because regardless, there's always different answers and they always blow my mind.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think one of the best analogies I can think of with regards to this question is, I guess on one of the previous episodes, Vincent Young from Singapore, the episode is episode 16, Somatic Surgeons, and he said that we're all like planets, we're sort of always moving in this really beautiful sort of solar system, our little own galaxy, right? And we're not necessarily revolving around the sun, we're revolving around suns. Everybody's its own sun and its own solar system, and always sort of constantly in motion. And that really brings me to this realization, also the overarching realization that dance is probably the only universal language, because we all moved before we could speak. And just inherently, body language has become an existential, a contribution to dance itself, because every single motion that we have been producing since we were born could somehow, in a way, be interpreted as archival for dance. And that's why a lot of therapists, a lot of artists lately have also been quite interested to work with children, or to work with, to use the term of play rather than create, right? Like play itself, it's such a pristine concept of creating art. So that's really my take about dance. I have been brought up in this quite rigorous system as well, and going through all these academic processes, but have come to the realization that motion, if we make sense of it, could be considered dance, and I think it should be considered dance. So with that, I am so super excited to end the session. Thank you so much to everyone here, Megan Schneider, Jacob Caldwell, and Elsie Mays Brown. All of us will be involved at the Soulfest Art Festival. In fact, you'll be hearing this when everything has already been happening. So
Right, pretty crazy.
Once again, thank you so much to Jacob, as the artistic director of All House Dance Collective. Thanks for bringing all of us here together. And I hope all of you just go and visit the Background Dancer at backgrounddancer.com. We have lots of cool content there. So thank you guys once again so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. This has been a super cool opportunity.